The Florida Panthers find themselves in familiar territory after losing Game 4 against the Vegas Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup Final. We discuss what went wrong, all the line changes, and more importantly, some injury concern for the Panthers, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Sunday, June 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back to get your daily Florida Panthers fix, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss, whether they're up 3-0, whether they're down 3-1, like the Florida Panthers find themselves in. Thank you to the everydayers who come back here. But the Florida Panthers, they in today's game, they fall behind, never had a lead. And this was a very clean game as far as players going to the box. Only 2 penalties on the night for both teams combined, and still the Florida Panthers come out on the losing end in this game. When in Game 3, this game was won for the Panthers at 5-on-5, but not the case tonight. But we do have a special guest on the show. It is a very familiar guest that you guys have heard here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. He is Florida Panthers historian Francisco Oporta. Francisco, welcome back to the show.
Hey. This is the first one after a loss this postseason, so no, I'm not having fun.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm 50-50. I'm not having fun based on the circumstances of them being down, but I'm also having fun the fact that they are in this position to be in the Stanley Cup Final with even though they're down 3-1. But let's just go right into this game, Francisco, where really, 139 into the game. I mean, even 22 seconds. Bob was tested early by Barbashev, and then at the 139 mark, a bad change, and you're talking. I forget what game number this is with regular season and postseason combined for these two teams, but this is about around the 100 game mark for the Panthers team. At this point. Yeah. And you're having bad changes when the puck isn't even out of the zone yet, and of course you open up the middle of the ice for Chandler Stevenson to go up the middle, and then Bob not having a chance on that first goal. And I mean, it was the Panthers were chasing the game the whole night. I mean, the Panthers were really late to their board battles as well. There was also one where the Vegas Golden Knights attempt to stretch pass, and Ekblad is late to get to the boards and was beaten by Mark Stone to avoid icing as well, and just breakouts in their own zone, but puck battles in the half walls. It was just it was kind of a messy first few minutes for the Panthers in this game. What'd you see for the Panthers coming out of the gate?
They've been slow to start games as of late, and you can have fatigue at this point. I mean, it's 100 plus games, and it's but that change was the biggest difference maker in this game. That was a mental mistake that at this point you shouldn't be making in the Stanley Cup Final. And it was Aaron Ekblad coming off for a change at the most inopportune time. Something that, had he held out for a couple more seconds, would have not happened, right? And that was the difference of this game. Mm-hmm. The Panthers, as much as Vegas really laid it onto them, especially when they went up 3-0 in that flurry, but the Panthers somehow, some way, still find a way to hang with Vegas. they still find ways to hang with Vegas. You had later on a crazy bounce for their first goal, pinballing into the net for Brandon Montour. And then, Barkey, the captain, gets his first goal, stepping up at the time that they needed him the most. And then you had the last 5 minutes of the game, which was just intensity set up to 11. And a possible chance for Tkachuk he's obviously, everybody's playing injured. Nobody's healthy right now, but Tkachuk has been not utilizing the full range of his arm. And if he had the ability to lift it just a little bit, he probably would have buried it and we'd be in overtime. So, but once again, all of that doesn't happen if not for that first goal. And it's just something that they're going to look back on and just be like, oh, okay, guys, come on. And I know a lot of people pile on with Aaron Ekblad. And even in game 3, when I was watching the game and seeing some of his decision making, it's been kind of suspect lately. His passes, just kind of a lot of things with that. He may be overthinking things or just not thinking enough, but that's the difference maker. And the team, the only reason that they hung on for so long was Bobrovsky in the end. He's been amazing. He's bounced back completely at this point, and the Panthers just need to find a way to help him out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's many times where there were breakouts in their own zone. I mean, there was one where Gudis was trying to clear it, and then there's a breakaway by Vegas as well, and then he retrieves it and then turns it over twice in the same sequence as well, and it as well for the Panthers there. And it's just that at this point in the series, I haven't really said this on the show, but we can't deny it. Vegas is the better team at this point in time. We talked about the depth and all that for Vegas, and how deep when Mark Stone is playing on your third line. I mean, Mark Stone was also quick to pucks as well. I mean, that second goal where he was just waiting for the play develop and for the Vegas Golden Knights to get in the zone, trailing the play to Stevenson for the second goal. My goodness, like how can you? It's like how can the Florida Panthers match up? Yeah, Etu's not playing. Yeah, where I don't expect them back in this series. I mean, you had a whole bunch of line shuffles with Nick Cousins going on the first line, and then that line wasn't doing anything. Yeah, you put Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, and Bennett back together, but then Duclair goes out for a little bit. Tkachuk goes 10 plus minutes without stepping on the ice as well, due to whatever not whatever may be going on, but of course what's obvious, the shoulder injury for him as well. So also that's just a whole bunch of, like, Paul Maurice has his hands full. Like, let's not kid ourselves with what he does, with what he has.
He's tried his best. He's trying his best with the tools that he has right now, and guys are banged up and just are trying to will themselves through this. I mean, Tkachuk was trying to as well, and Maurice held Tkachuk out for most of that third period. And I once he was out for like the first 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, he's probably going to hold him out until probably around the 5 minute mark. 5 minutes, I'm sure, to give one last burst of energy from Tkachuk to see what he could do. And even then, Tkachuk still almost found a way to tie that game, which, once again, you're hats off to Tkachuk for trying to eke through that, and he almost had it. His arms just can't. It's something with the shoulder or something like that. I mean, you can just see him holding it at points. He's kind of grimacing. He's not holding the stick. I wish I had my hockey stick here. I could show it to you, give like a in studio type of thing. But regardless, he's not 100% there, and I'm not sure what they shot him with. I don't know how many cortisones or whatever they were shooting him up with to try and get him through it. But even then, it was still too much for him. Paul Maurice did try and shake up the lines going to that third period to try and figure things out, put Anton Lundell in Tkachuk's place, and that did provide some spark there.
Lundell was great.
Yeah. So he's going to have to do some clever adjustments, and we'll see if it's only a couple days, 1 day layoff really until we get to Vegas on a couple days on Tuesday. Sorry. So we'll see if they'll get some good rest. I'm not sure if they'll get into practice or anything like that on Monday once they're in Vegas, because and we'll see how the conditioning goes just for that. But we're back against the wall again. So we've been here before, and I had tweeted out that the Panthers are going to have to bookend this playoff run with another miracle, akin to what they did against Boston. But it's Vegas. In the heat of the game, you're tweeting out all kinds of irrational things. The game's rigged. Batman wants the Vegas to win. And, I could see why Dallas fans were throwing garbage at the Golden Knights after between periods. But Vegas is playing well. They're
disciplined.
They're very disciplined.
They're simple. They play a simple game.
AHL is stopping just about everything the Panthers are throwing at them. But even then, the Panthers weren't getting many shots out to them early on in this game, and they didn't really get aggressive until they got one. Once they got one, it just seemed like, okay, most dangerous lead in hockey, 2-goal lead, and you kind of felt it. The crowd got back into the game big time. You got the second goal, and it just but Hill just wouldn't let one through, and there were just unlucky bounces for the Panthers. Just Sammy Bennett was in front of the net for quite a long time, and he had a few pucks that landed just behind him or right at his feet. If he had eyes in the back of his head, he probably wouldn't potted those goals as well. But it's just Hill's been fantastic. So Vegas is playing well. I mean, it's kind of where we've got 3-1 series leads against Western teams that are just playing better than the other team from South Florida down here.
Yep, and you saw at the end how the Panthers were starting to get in front of the net, but just the centering fees were just not connecting on the tapes as well for the Panthers, but credit to the Vegas Golden Knights, their sticks were active as well as far as breaking up those attempts and getting their clears when necessary, even though the Florida Panthers did in fact lead in the shot attempts category as well. But of course, both of these teams going into the final, like we spoke about on the show, that both these teams have scored while not dominating the possession as well. So they've taken opportunities of taking advantage of giveaways and all that stuff and turnovers for their opposition as well. But we're going to transition into segment number 2. We're going to discuss more about what is being said about the 3-1 series lead, what is and level of concern, our optimism if this can in fact happen again for the Florida Panthers in this playoff run, as the Florida Panthers have shown that Cats do in fact have many lives with just coming back and making it a 1-goal deficit. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about bird dogs. And the warm weather is here, and that means one thing: shorts. But with shorts, finding the right fit is always a challenge. With bird dogs, you no longer have to worry about finding the right fit. We've got a style for every occasion and a fit of every performance, from khaki to Oxford shorts to gym shorts and swim trunks, all equipped with a built-in liner for enhanced comfort. Go and pursue the Bird Dog collection now and find your right fit. And be sure to check out their line of khakis, joggers, sweatpants as well. Stop searching for the perfect pair of shorts. Head to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL right now. And if you enter promo code LockedOnNHL at checkout, you'll receive a free custom Yeti-style tumbler for every order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. Promo code LockedOnNHL. Segment number 2 here on this Sunday, June 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, recapping this 3-2 regulation loss for the Florida Panthers against the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final. Well, it was this crowd was excited. You had 5-time major champion Brooks Koepka bringing the drum as well, coming into this one, and it just sucks, man. And just the fact that, when the Florida Panthers were down 3-1 against the Boston Bruins, I mean, I said it myself. That I think it's over for the Florida Panthers there. But listen, man, it's deflating right now. But I don't know whether I'm in the point of, can history repeat itself, or it's just like, or to be in the mindset of doom and gloom for this Panthers team they're going back to on the road. 2-day gap. I don't even remember whether between game 4 and 5 in round 1 was a 2-day gap. It feels like so long ago. But what's your mindset as far as the Panthers being down in this position? Because we have in fact seen this before.
Well, if it's anything to go on, this is probably the most comfortable. I mean, this is the most comfortable position for the Panthers, because this is the position they're always in
since January.
Yeah, they've been fighting and just been on their heels for months now, and have taken it as far as it could go. And this is we do have to appreciate that they have taken it this far, that we're talking about them in June. And this is the greatest Florida Panthers team to have ever played that we're watching right now. They've surpassed the 96 team at this point.
Which had 92 points too.
Yeah. And that 96 team did have one last fantastic gasp against the Avalanche with the triple overtime game. So the Panthers are not going to lay down. Wayne Gretzky was talking in the post game show about how when they lost to the Islanders, and that the Islanders' 4th Stanley Cup in that dynasty before the Oilers started theirs, and they were walking across from the locker room at the old Nassau Coliseum, and they have to walk through it, and they're not, the Islanders players, this is their 4th in a row, and they're happy about it, but they're banged up, and they're just gassed, and they're not celebrating just yet. That's why the parade is a few days afterwards, once they've recovered their bodies, right? And if the Panthers are going to go out, they're going to make sure Vegas, those guys on the Golden Knights, are not going to be okay for a few days before that parade goes down that strip, if that's what the Golden Knights try and force to happen. But it's short-term goals. Just try and play minute by minute, try and chip away, try and get something, try and send this back to Sunrise, and then we'll go from there. That's where I'm at right now. I mean, 3-1 series leads. I mean, the Marlins did it in 2003 against the Cubs, right? And they got blown out and blown out in Game 4, and then Josh Beckett pitches a gem in Game 5. So it might take pitching a gem from Bobrovsky and just a goal or two, and it has to be from a guy, because like Tkachuk, or the shapeshifter that embodies both Tkachuk and Jimmy Butler, they've given all they can with their body right now, and you're gonna have to see it from somebody else, maybe Barkov, or maybe somebody on the 3rd or 4th line, just one of those, somebody an unsung hero, somebody that we just don't know. Could it be Lomberg? Could it be Colin White? Could it be somebody else is gonna have to figure it out, because the top guys are banged up right now. So I'm not trying to think of this like, okay, we're just going to be watching the end of this and you just clap. You just kind of, if that's the case, you kind of, I was at Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals, when the Heat were just right at their backs too. And I didn't leave early, and as the seconds were winding down, I was clapping for my team, and I was clapping for them like, you know what, they've they've given us so much and this and that, and I was just happy and grateful to have seen them, get that far, even though they, just. But then a miracle happened, right? So I would advise Panthers fans out there from every generation, the OGs from '93, or the ones that this is their first big run ever, just appreciate what we're seeing right now, because those OGs from '93 can tell you it might take a long time to come back. And whatever spirits are out there, the hockey gods, I don't know, maybe they can look down favorably just for a few more days.
Yeah, and one player one player that I could think of probably to make a difference, maybe in Game 5, that can swing the momentum is probably someone like Sam Bennett. Can you believe that he doesn't have a penalty at all this series after all the PIM that the Panthers had even in games 1 and 2? Tkachuk was penalty free. Yeah, I know he was off the ice for
and I agree with you on Bennett. I mean, he was around the net constantly in those last 5 minutes. He was right there on the doorstep, and just
on redirections too,
right there on, like, next to his skate, and he just can't move his stick, or he just and then the defenseman from Vegas just kind of swipes it away, but he was right there. So it's that's a good pick for somebody that can just kind of might be due for something.
And Paul Maurice did speak about after the game. Of course, this was a given that he was going to be asked about 3-1 and the whole Boston, and he says that it's something, I'm paraphrasing here, and something that we'll think about, celebrate it, and then get to work. And some people might take that the wrong way as far as Maurice saying that, but I can kind of see where he's going as far as that. And it goes back to his quote about enjoying the journey. Yeah, you're down 3-1, but as far as the unity that this team has when it's come together, and little behind the curtains, it took a while for the media to get inside the locker room, and one of the doors was closed even further from the locker room, so we didn't hear what was said after the game.
I was there. I was right next to you.
Yeah. So as far as that, for the just to a peek behind the curtain, but with Paul Maurice saying that, I could kind of see how maybe, just maybe, even though this is a pressure situation, I could kind of see how maybe the Panthers can come maybe a little, not necessarily relaxed, but not super desperate. I mean, look, Paul Maurice was even talking about hits prior to Game 3, about not overexerting yourself when it comes to your energy levels, and the hits have gone down as far as trying to do too much. And I didn't think the Panthers, even in Games 3 and 4, I know they lost tonight, but I didn't feel like they were consistently trying to do too much as far as the physicality. And look, it was a penalty-free game in Game 4. Maybe it was the referees saying, okay, let's tone it down as far as putting guys in the box, but that has to mean something.
They were out hit 32-21 tonight. So it's a big disparity for sure. I think they were trying to fill out the game. It was unfortunate that that at the minute 39 in you're down, and it was just a dumb thing that happened. Because aside from that, I think they were filling out the game, and I think that's kind of how they approach all of these games. They kind of fill out what they kind of need to do. But at a minute 39, they didn't have that luxury after that first goal, and suddenly that was it. They were just on their heels trying to play catch up, and then Vegas with the flurry gets up 3-0, and then so they lost their opportunity to feel out how Vegas was going to respond, just from just a mental error. It's unfortunate. I think that because the rest of the game, once more, I thought they did well enough to hang with Vegas, and they did well enough to hang with Vegas, and it really was just that. So I think they go into game 5 with that. Like we're banged up. We're an unfortunate thing happened, and yet Bob is giving us the chance to hang with Vegas, and that's how they're gonna have to go into it. I like how Paul Maurice has approached his coaching and as far as his message to the players throughout the playoffs, just his speeches that they
even in losses.
Yeah, even in losses. He's been coaching a long time. He was kind of like a phenom early on when in his young career, when he was with Hartford and they move on over to Carolina. And this isn't his first Stanley Cup Finals run. He was there with Carolina in 2002. So he's been here before. He's probably, after 20 plus years since then, or 20 years, 21 years since
21.
then, he's definitely got a new perspective. He's an older coach now, much more seasoned. He's racked up a lot of victories, and he's been with a few higher pressure situations, with Canadian teams and such, that he's probably more appreciative of the moment. And I think that's what he's trying to instill on the players. They may never get back to this point. So regardless, just be appreciative of it. And I always think, and this is kind of how I thought, because a lot of people are always hung up on rings and winning it all. I always think that at least making it to a championship series is probably just enough of an honor for a player. Plenty of hockey Hall of Famers have at least played in the Stanley Cup final. I think that's an honor in and of itself, and that players probably do need to appreciate that. And I think, and once again, I'm trying to speak to the fans that are out there as well, that are feeling pain right now, feeling a little disappointed, feeling a little down, that appreciate that they're here, enjoy it. People have been seeing what Sunrise can be like with a rabid Panthers fan base, because people are coming in from all over the country to come down here to watch these games, right? That were fans back in 93, 96, or they were kids. They saw terrible Panthers teams, Roberto Luongo standing on his head, saving the most saves in a regular season with a terrible Panthers team, all through the doldrums, and David Booth and Nathan Horton and Stephen Weiss and all these other guys coming through, Thomas Vokunek, and people like that. There's been a lot that's happened that I mean, it's just that's what it is. You just kind of have to appreciate that they're here. And it's not just participation trophies. Yeah, they got the Prince of Wales trophy. So I mean, I'm seeing a comment there, but you want to win it all, but it's also about the journey. I think Ira Winterman is also he's Sun Sentinel Heat beat writer, and he's often talked about how he doesn't really like the narrative of, it's all just about what happens at the end. For him, because he's a beat writer and a journalist, he sees the storyline,
the work,
from training camp all the way to whenever the season ends. And that in and of itself is also beautiful, right? If you're a wrestling fan, you also, you pay attention to the storylines. It's not just about, what happens at WrestleMania or all these other things. It's just, there's storylines in between. And that's also part of it. Even Damian Lillard has talked about, I'm talking about other sports and other things, but it's the same message. It's like, you're in Sunrise covering the Stanley Cup final, right? We're talking about this. This is fun. So there you go. I mean, I still look fondly back on 2013 and 2020 with the ad for the Heat, and 2012 and the Marlins 2003. And I wasn't there for 96. I a fan. I was playing Sega Genesis on Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. That's what I was doing. But I'm appreciative of this, and people have reached out to me just like, hey man, you know, I'm so happy for you. Like, so everybody out there, I mean, you're sad, you're pissed off, all these other things, but you know, this is still a good thing to happen. I can't wait to see what happens next year, because this is how you plant the seeds. The Panthers have been working. I covered this team back in 2013. George Richards posted out when he was just saying like, this place was empty. You know, they barely got 10,000 people into the building for some games. And look I mean, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. So appreciate that, folks. Appreciate it now, right? The loss stings, but appreciate this moment, and we'll try and see what happens in Game 5.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think of going back to people who have been there before winning. I think of Marian Hossa. I think of someone like Ray Bork, who didn't win until his 22nd season in the NHL as well. So those are guys, if you want to look at examples of how hard it is to win in this league, look at those two guys. But we're going to transition into segment number 3. We're going to discuss more about what Matthew Tkachuk said about his injury as far as when asked by the media post game. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Game Time. And buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, theater near you. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals for tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, hockey, concerts, theater, and more. Game Time guarantees you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section for row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Go to Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment number 3 here on this Sunday, June 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers lose in regulation by a final score of 3-2, make it interesting at the end, but now trail 3-1 in the series against the Vegas Golden Knights. And little scuffle at the end after the final horn, mostly Brandon Montour going in after Pietrangelo had the puck over glass, Aiden Hill taking hacks at Reinhart as well, and just crazy ending for that. But of course, with let's go right into what was asked as far as Matthew Tkachuk. And I think Montour spoke to media, Bobrovsky spoke to the media, those Barkov, but mostly I want to highlight Tkachuk. And he was asked a very, very difficult question. It was by my friend, by our friend David Dwork, and who had the pleasure of sitting next to him, Aaron Brown, and Roy Bellamy on the night. And he asked a very difficult question for Tkachuk about what's it going to take for him to exit the game, and also being asked about if it was in relation to the injury of Game 3. And this was the very first time we saw Matthew Tkachuk stumped on a question. Usually he's very open with at least in my eyes, about how he's feeling and everything. And also, you know, of course, when it comes to injuries, you're not going to disclose stuff, obviously. But he's clearly bothered, but also just about I don't know how, I can't read Tkachuk's mind, but I can only imagine what's going through his head. It's like, damn, why does it have to come at this point in time, in this moment, of course. But that was the thing that stood out of him being asked, what's it going to take? And we've seen other players, even this season for the Florida Panthers, who they take bumps and bruises and you'll never see them come out. Like the perfect example I could tell you, Gustav Forsling. You see him block shots all the time. He goes down the tunnel, comes back, and he's played every single game this season. Matthew Tkachuk, same thing, but this is the first time I really saw him being stumped as far as being asked. But also that can maybe mean that this might be more serious than we think too.
Yeah. you're hoping that he's got. I mean, it has to be a shoulder injury. Something is torn there. As far as what it looks like, just I mean, you can tell just the way he's holding the stick, and he's not getting any sort of power with his shots, any sort of lift, and he's for the most part he's trying to position himself in places to try and maybe just poke at the puck and maybe it'll get through, but positioning can only get you so far if you can't really work the stick much at all, and it obviously doesn't help at all on a defensive end either, because you can't really poke at guys or check anybody. It's really he's gonna play game 5. Just
there's no quitting him.
He's gonna play game 5. That's a given. Just how they're going to do it is going to be interesting. We saw a little bit of it of Paul Maurice trying to figure it out, limiting his minutes, putting Lundell up on that second line. It's going to be really rough for sure. And maybe they'll try and work out some scenarios, maybe a practice or so, just to try and see how they can do it. But or they'll try and pump him with something. But he can only pump so much if the arm just can't do this motion, can't rotate, I mean, he's holding the stick just like this, and I wish I had my stick with me so I could show you all. But it's not. It's only so much, and he honestly didn't know how to answer that question, and it's I mean, it is what it is. I don't know what else to say. It's just he's gonna play in game 5, but. We'll see the injury reports, because that's when it all comes out on both sides. What people have been playing with, who's got broken legs, fractures, punctured lungs.
Valery Nichushkin last year, broken leg,
torn muscles, torn MCLs or ACLs. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of things going on, and torn labrum, maybe rotator cuff. I don't know. Rotator cuff. So we'll see.
Yeah, and you just hope that for not just the hockey side, because we want this team to win, but the quality of life about how he's going to go through for an off season, because regardless of win or lose, the Panthers are going to have a short off season going into training camp next year, and it's just gonna you wonder. I shouldn't look too far ahead. I should not do that, but we still have a game 5 to play, but you just wonder how recovery time is going to look if a surgery is needed as well. So that's just kind of tough to think about, especially if you end up on the losing end. But hey, it just comes down to winning one game, and you're gonna fly back to Sunrise, Florida either way. Might as well get an extra game out of it, right?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Vegas can enjoy their parade down the strip, and then enjoy terrible Raiders and A's baseball and football. So
the Raiders' new stadium design even has a big foul territory. So
the A's, yeah, it's. I mean, good luck with that.
Yeah, so I rolled my eyes when I saw that, but of course it couldn't be more Oakland A's. But before we get too much into the baseball side of things,
smallest ballpark in the league. It'll be like 30, maybe 29,000 seats. Good luck.
Maybe, but Francisco, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Despite a loss for the Florida Panthers in Game 4. It's not over for this team. They still have an opportunity on Tuesday night. So before we sign off here, tell everybody where they can follow you.
Yeah, at FLA Cats History. Thanks for everybody who's been following throughout this playoff run. I've got a ton of new followers, so that's fantastic. And if you like Marlins baseball, because there's 7 games above 500 this deep into the season, at Marlins History.
And they won.
Yeah, they won tonight. So they're doing well, so that'll be good. And they also swept the Oakland A's. So that's the team that Vegas is going to get. So have fun with that. And just because I'm in a suit doesn't mean I can't be petty. So
it's great to bring a little different flavor here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, obviously. But Francisco, thank you so much, and I hope to see you very soon again, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Armando. Take care.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for the everydayers out there, make sure to come back for Monday's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where Alex Baumgartner of the 5 Reasons Sports Network will be joining me as we continue to prepare for a Game 5 between the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm Armando Velez with Francisco Oporta, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.